Broadsword calling Danny boy.
Okay, YouTubers, this is Joe from ArtAlienTV, taking a re-look at this large panoramic image 16702, PIA 16702. An awesome image. This one of my favourites. I spent months scouring this image in great detail back at the beginning of last year. I first published the finds from this particular image in April, end of March, early, I think it was March, April 2013. You may well have seen a lot of this stuff before. It's been white balanced, so everything looks a kind of sort of bluey kind of grey colour, which is probably not very accurate, but it is better than the puke filter that we normally get. It's a high def image, 200 dpi, not being overcompressed or resized, which is nice. So you can actually zoom in and get some nice detail on some of the, especially the larger objects. This looks very much like part of a statue, a foot with the toes broken off. Perhaps it may not be, of course, it may be something else, but it does have some rather nice symmetry to it, as many of the objects nearby do. There's all sorts of stuff thrown around and broken, much like these statue parts. There is loads of people now finding statue fragments, and I mean, I can't remember how many now. I mean, there must be hundreds now that have published similar finds now on Mars in recent months. This looks very much like some kind of animal bone. It's hollowed out. It has two hollow sections to it, which is very unusual. Could be a spinal bone of some kind. Don't know exactly. Never seen anything quite like it, really. I have got a huge collection of skulls and books like Grey's Anatomy and all sorts of. Being an artist, of course, you learn about anatomy from quite a young age. This looks very much like a dead rodent, not a rat, but some kind of hamster or something similar. It seems to have a broken neck. Its head is actually twisted round, as you will see when we get a little bit closer here. It looks like it's been killed by something or had an accident. If you look at the actual head on the left there, the eye is at the bottom, so that head is twisted round as if it's been broken. Not difficult to do with a rodent. They have quite small bones. This was probably attacked or something by another creature and died in the process. This is a rat from Earth, obviously. You can see the difference there if you look at the tail. I mean, the little guy on Mars there doesn't have one. So it's not a rat or a mouse, as we know it. Some more rodents here. There's at least one or two rodents in this particular image. I have done an update on this recently called Mars 15 Days Later, which you really should watch, because it proves that that these things are moving around, that at least some of them are moving around on the surface up there. This particular guy on the left here, lying on his back with his legs in the air, contorted, looks like some kind of rodent. Lying on his back, he's probably may have died of natural causes. Could have got caught out in a storm or at night, froze to death. Didn't get back to his burrow in time before the really cold conditions came in, and could have just frozen there. Very much like this guy in his death posture, legs kind of akimbo. A typical death posture of a rodent. I mean, what can I say? This looks like another small rodent. This guy does actually appear in a number of my other videos, the same guy but in different parts of the area, so he's moving around. I'm pretty sure I've got the same guy elsewhere. You'll have to check my channel for more details on that. This guy looks a bit like a snail. What can I say? Looks like a snail. I don't know if it is. It may just be a rock. But it does, when I flip this to black and white grayscale just to compare it to it, and it does look strikingly similar. from that angle. This looks very much like a small jellyfish that's been petrified. If there was a cataclysm on Mars, and it certainly looks like there was, the water may have dried up extremely rapidly if there was a cataclysm. So any creatures in the water at the time would have just been sort of deposited in the bottom of Gale Crater and then freeze dried probably. Similar to these jellyfish fossils here. I mean, these are fossilized, different process. They obviously landed in sediment and sedimentary layers and hardened as fossils do. These may or may not be humanoid skulls. I'm not really sure. This is right at the back of the image. It's right at the top back end to the left of the source image, and looks at a glance very much like an adult and child skull together. The child skeleton being on the right there. You can just make out two eye sockets, very circular eye sockets. It couldn't really be a rock because rocks rarely have holes through the middle of them, and it's unheard of to see rocks with two holes the same size next to each other like that in a rock. So, you know, a lot of people keep calling these things rocks. Well, I don't think they are. Anyone who knows anything about anatomy will tell you that only skulls generally have symmetrical features like that, like those eye sockets there, orbits as they're called, and nasal cavities. You know, it does show some similarities, the eye socket shape to the star child skull on the left there. Very round sort of shape to them. And not dissimilar to this skull found in Mexico about a year ago. Another cone head. Cone heads may well be prevalent across our solar system, who knows? Lots have been found in Peru, Mexico, and South America. Even a lot of the Egyptians had elongated skulls, a fact that you're rarely told in school when learning about Egypt or anything like that. Even Tutankhamun had an elongated skull. He was a conehead, as were a lot of his family. Akhenaten IV, if you look at pictures of him, he looks an incredibly alien-looking guy. Very, very strange. The elongated skulls were quite common in the royal family chains of Egypt. This looks very much like a fossilized turtle. Maybe not, may just be rocks, but it does look suspiciously like a flipper there on the right, the lower right sticking out. There are lots and lots of animal fossils around in this part of Gale Crater. I've covered them in lots of other videos recently, so this is why I'm going back over this stuff just to reinforce some of the things that I've been saying recently, that there are lots and lots of fossils around. Lying in that particular part, because it was underwater at one point. This, I think, is a leatherback turtle. I've changed the colour a little bit there to try and match it up, so it does look strikingly similar. This particular bunch of what may be skulls here look fairly ambiguous, but this one on the left has eye sockets and nasal cavities. Of course, the way the light's hitting it, you can only see one eye socket, but there is actually an adjacent one next to that. If you look closely at the image yourself, you will find it. You might want to play with the contrast a little bit, but it will be there. I guarantee it. Not dissimilar in shape, the skull, to this. I'm not saying it is a crocodile, of course, although other crocodilian specimens have been discovered on Mars, at least the Martian equivalent of that anyway. This looks like another turtle shell. Pay attention to the sort of bits on the back of the shell there, like this guy. I mean, that's weed, dried out weed that was growing on the back. They spend so long in the water, of course, things start to grow on them. They have animal life and plant life growing on their backs, and this obviously could even survive after the creatures died, as long as there's water. So not dissimilar to this specimen at the bottom of these objects here. Of course, it may be a rock, but it shows signs of some kind of being related to some kind of creature. Who's to say for sure? Not too sure about that one. Did Mars once look like this? Maybe so. I mean, if it was covered in water, which it looks like it was, there would have been all manner of creatures on swimming around, just like there was on Earth, and still is now. This particular skull, I've not been able to work out what it is exactly. It looks like some kind of dinosaur skull, or giant lizard, or it could even be a marine mammal, much like a walrus or something. It has two tusks sticking out on the right there. Can't see any sort of eye sockets or anything, but this may only be part of the creature, obviously. Looks very alien, this thing. It has tusks, what else can I say? It may be related to some sort of marine mammal or something similar to this dinosaur from Earth, the Chilotherium. Very interesting specimen, this one from Earth. And it does show similarities to the mammoth. I mean, it could be some kind of land mammal with tusks. Who's to say? Not enough of it there to tell, really. You do need a lot more to go on. This looks like a similar type of skull, but this is only a few inches long. Very small. But look at the protrusions sticking out on the top left of the object. They look like teeth or tusks. Who's to say? This also may be wrong, a bit ambiguous, not too sure about that one. Is this an animal bone? It certainly looks like one. I'm not sure what type of animal bone it is. Could be a spinal bone. It's hollow. It does show symmetry. If you look at the hollowed out part on the left there, if you look around the top of that section, it does look fairly symmetrical. This looks very much like a cuttlefish bone, like you would find on the beach on Earth, lying on its back. It does have two little teeth on the top left of the artifact. Hard to say with this one, also a bit too small. I mean, it's only because this is such a good quality image you can even see a lot of these things. If this was over compressed and resized like most Mars images are, you wouldn't even be able to figure it out at all. This is another strange rock or object. I've done more analysis on this one in other videos. It looks like a part of something like some part of a machine or apparatus. Excuse me. It has some kind of bolt going through it. It's very symmetrical. It does seem to be hinged. The part on the right here going over the part on the left. Who's to say? There are other videos on my channel showing more info on that if you want to check them out. There are other parts that seem to match up with it as well. This looks very much like a small primitive type of fish or amphibian fossil. Yet another fossil. It speaks for itself, really. It's got a tail and it's got an eye there at the front on the right. It's quite large. This is near the back of the image. This is probably about a foot long, but obviously being further away it looks very small. Much like this very similar one, not that far away from it. It looks a bit like a tadpole or some kind of amphibious creature. It may be a fish, it may be a rock, but it certainly seems to have a head and a tail. A bit like a mudhopper that you might see on Earth, which is a sort of transitional creature that you would get that lives in water but kind of in the mud at the same time. They're the sort of the link between fish and amphibians. This may be something similar to that. Hard to say exactly. There are lots and lots of other similar fossils nearby, which I've covered in other videos. This is a very strange object. This looks like a component part of some kind of technology here. part of an engine, part of a machine, who knows. But what is very strange about this, not only does it look like it's got a universal joint in the middle of it, but this protruding material on the right here looks like plastic. It actually looks like some kind of plastic material coming out of it, like it's been torn off or broken off something. Very, very hard to tell what this is. It does have some strange symmetry to it. It seems to have little screws in it as well. If you've really got to look at that closely and stare at it for a while and look around with the image to pull out the detail, but it's there. This is one of my favourite finds. Is when I first found this and published it back in April 2013. This blew me away. I was absolutely flabbergasted when I found this guy. It looks very much like a tortoise, or as the Americans may call it, a turtle. But yeah, this is a large tortoise, if it is a tortoise. It has its neck sticking out on the right, with an eye visible there, just about visible, with his nose. It's walking away from us, slightly to the left. You can see his legs at the back there, and then maybe a tail in between there. I'm not sure. Used to have a tortoise at home when we were kids. Not that different to this. Not anywhere near as big. This guy is similar in size to this Galapagos tortoise, which are a good couple of feet across, 2 or 3 foot across. Not quite that big. It's probably about 18 inches wide. The Mars tortoise, from what I can work out. It may be a little smaller or bigger, but approximately 1.5 foot wide. This is another animal head. Found many animal heads similar to this. Looks like a bit like a camel. This is small. If this is an animal head, it's only approximately about 8 or 9 inches long. What else can I say? It's a bit ambiguous. It's a little bit small. It's a bit far away, but you can see what looks like a nose and mouth protruding on the left, and an ear on the right, with an eye just above it, towards the centre, just next to the ear. It's too small. It's too far away. Not too sure. But I have found many other animal heads and skulls, so don't rule anything out. It could just be a rock. It could be carved. Who knows? But it does show a lot of similarity. If you look especially at the lips and nose on this guy, if you imagine if you thin this guy out a bit and made the skull a bit longer, it does look extremely similar. This looks very much like a bird skull, with a sort of curved beak sticking out on the right of the thing there. Could just be a rock, this one, but there are lots of other bird specimens that I found. Some of them are extremely large. This is small. This is a matter of inches, only 3 or 4 inches long. Not much to write home about this one, but it does look like a beak. May not be, of course. This is an interesting, what looks like some kind of crocodilian skull. Now, it's a little bit confusing when first looked at, but you can see what look like teeth in the middle there. This, I think, is a skull facing away from us. We're looking at the back end of it here, and this is what confused me when I made the video initially. So I went back to it and made this remake back in September last year, which I then republished. And here's a comparison for you. Looks very similar to the crocodile skull on the left there, being held up. You imagine it lying in the dirt, and you're seeing it from the back. It does show striking similarities. Of course, it may be nothing to do with crocodile at all. It could be some completely different creature, but it does look like some kind of lizard. This is an interesting small skull. This one. It's only, this one's probably about 7 or 8 inches long. Perhaps a bit smaller actually, about 5 or 6. Hard to say exactly with this one. It's a little bit far away, this one, so size is a bit awkward with this one. But it does seem to have a nose, an eye, and some hair. I have found other skulls with hair still on them and with eyes still in them. Many of them still have eyes. A lot of these specimens look very fresh, but of course they could have been there for 10,000 years. Specimens that have been found in Antarctica that were frozen and died, freeze-dried. Seal specimens have been found and dated at over 6,000-7,000 years old, and they're in perfect condition and show very, very little signs of any degradation or rotting or whatever. Similar to this cow skull, of course, in shape, not as large. This is quite a large skull, this one, obviously. It does seem that there may well have been some cross-pollination between Earth and Mars. Looking at the similarities between many of the animal and even humanoid skulls, it looks like either we took some there or they brought some here at some point. Either that or DNA is common throughout our galaxy. Take your pick. This is the now infamous what was coined the Mars Iguana. Not the original Mars Iguana, this is the second Mars Iguana. Caused a huge media kind of storm back in November 2013. I actually initially published this guy in April 2013. Many people claim to have discovered it. It's not an iguana, it's a dead mammal of some sort, lying on its side, contorted. You can see its nose and eye there. Lower jaw missing, it's been torn off or broken off. Some of its limbs have been sort of eaten away slightly. But it looks very much, to me, like some kind of dead mammal. I don't know what sort of mammal. It may not be a dead mammal, it could be some sort of marine creature. But to me it looks very similar to sort of dog or something similar. Looking at the jaw, obviously there's no teeth on it, so canine teeth are usually a pretty good giveaway when it comes to identifying this sort of thing. Not dissimilar in configuration to this guy that was washed up on the beach in the US a couple of years back. Caused a bit of a media storm, this one. What can I say? Even the colouring is similar. It's got a contorted body with its limbs sort of strewn out the back there. I mean, who's to say? There are lots of other animal corpses that I've found since. That particular one we just looked at, the so-called Mars Iguana, I initially published in April. A lot of other people claim to have discovered it, even though I published it 6 months before anyone else did. So make your own mind up about that one. That was definitely a first for ArtAlienTV. It was all over Fox News in November, all over the press in the UK as well. Caused quite a media storm. Quite a backlash as well. I got a lot of abuse from people watching the video saying that I'm crazy, and as usual. People are coming around to this idea now, so watch this space, folks. It may be hard for some people to grasp a lot of this stuff. We've been kind of brainwashed when it comes to Mars that there's nothing up there apart from rocks, but who says who? Who's decided that for everyone? Keep an open mind, look it up yourself, download the images, zoom in, have a closer look. You will find loads and loads of dead creatures and skulls and fossils, even humanoid ones if you're lucky. There are parts of machinery lying around. There's loads of junk lying around in Gale Crater. It all looks like it's been washed in there in some sort of cataclysm at some point. What can I say? Download it and take a look yourself. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope this wasn't too long for you. Thanks to all my subscribers, almost 1,400 of you now, doing very well, thank you very much. Thanks for your support, and I shall see you soon.